Welcome to the Christchurch Fox Chapel podcast. It's the fastest growing conservative, evangelical, charismatic Anglican podcast in the entire Fox Chapel area. Ben and I wrapping up the season finale.
Yes.
Of
Series finale.
Yeah.
Or is it a season? Yeah, season sounds good.
Well, it's a sermon series, but I think season is like the new thing now.
It is, yeah.
Like, what season of...
Yeah.
The Chosen.
Oh, yes.
Are you in?
When are they going to come out with the third one?
No, they had a storm in Utah, is it, where they film? Like trash the set, put them back a bit.
That's lame.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Jonathan Roumie couldn't do anything about the storm.
Well, he's
not Jesus.
Because he's not Jesus.
It's so hard. It's so hard for him. Like, people come up to him, they like talk to him like he's Jesus.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be brutal.
Well, especially for people who this is how they've come to faith. He's like the only.
When they picture Jesus, like in their mind, they probably think of his face.
It's amazing to think that people are being evangelized by a TV show now. TV Jesus.
Things like that will all be sorted out, I think, in the final day, and I think standing before the real Jesus, the Lord will say, "So much of what you saw in Jonathan Roumie, you were seeing me, but in fact, you were looking to something incomplete, and I wanted you to make that switch to seeing the fullness of who I am." So, and Jonathan will be there and be like, "Sorry, guys."
Jonathan will be like saying, "I've been saying this all along."
Yeah.
But they wouldn't listen. I've been living like the life of Brian life. Like everyone keeps coming up to me.
Yeah. I never get anybody like confusing me for thinking that I look like Jesus or anything like that.
No.
Yeah. Probably because I'm a beardless.
You've got the American
male.
teeth that Jesus had.
Did he have American teeth?
From all the photographs and pictures and images I've seen, yeah. So, and he can't be me because I haven't got enough hair. So we're in...
Actually, we don't know.
We don't know.
He could have been hairless.
Very important that we don't know.
Yeah.
So we've got this last little encounter with Jesus in this series or season. And Jesus heals 2 blind men. We've looked at the healing of the blind before. So it's interesting to compare this with other ones and what's different and what's the same. And it would be good as well, I think, to talk a little bit about just the series as a whole, what patterns we see, don't see, where we are at the end of all of this and what's the point.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start by descending a little bit into the madness of our discussion over this passage, or do you want to start with the themes of the overall thing?
I don't know.
It's up to you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do
the host.
Should we do some big themes first?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So, we come up with this little phrase: "Every heal is a reveal of who Jesus really is." There's something revelatory about all these healings.
Yeah.
Particularly, our passage "Opening of Eyes." There's a theme there as well, but there's something about Jesus revealing. Not just who he is, but what he alone can do, and even what he wants to do. The stuff about his nature, stuff about his character, or to use better terminology, his sort of ontology and his immanence. The stuff about, the immutable facets of who he is.
Yeah.
What he does. Yeah, the healer heals.
Yeah, and we'll see that in our passage today, that like he heals because he has compassion.
Right.
So one of the things you learn about Jesus is, we already know by this point in Matthew, but that he's compassionate, and that does connect us to so many Old Testament passages where Yahweh, the God of Israel, hint, same person, is full of compassion.
For sure.
So, we're getting a really robust picture of who Jesus is.
We get a lovely picture of who he is, what he does. We get really... Jesus is pretty much the only consistent thing in this entire series. So we've had Jesus heal by remote. We've had him heal by touch, heal by word. We've had him heal physical ailments. We've had him heal mental ones. We've had him heal or cast out the demonic. So sometimes, there's a demonic origin to a problem. Sometimes there's a very physical origin. Some people have had trouble from birth. Some people have had it quite recently.
Sometimes he heals out of responding to someone's extraordinary faith. And then sometimes the person doesn't play any role or part in it whatsoever and has no faith, and Jesus just shows up and heals them.
Right.
So I think that's important actually for me, because I tend to want to find, want to hack the system, right? Like find what the method is behind it. So how can I manipulate God so that I can get what I want?
Is there an incantation? Is there a special attitude, form of words, behavior?
I used to do this all the time. Have you ever heard of the ACTS method of prayer?
Yeah,
where you
adoration, confession,
thanksgiving, supplication. So it's like if you pray by starting by adoring who God is, and then confessing your sins, and then giving thanks, and then finally you ask for what you need. And so I used to think like, okay, I need to like go through this like formula in order before I get to what I really want to pray about. And then
I do teaspoon. Thank you, sorry, please.
I think that's a really helpful way of like ordering it in our minds.
Yeah.
So that we're not just focused on our grocery list thing.
Right.
Because sometimes I need to be pulled out of myself.
But just like with the kids, right? I mean, so Ben never asked for anything. And went and got his own job at Chick-fil-A to buy me food. But like, but apart from his like funny character, if Ben said, hey Dad, just, can I get a new Xbox game? I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Cool. If he sort of came and said, Father, I humbly beseech you because you're so wise and your shirt looks nice today. I do confess that, I've been picking my nose and I stayed in bed too long, but can I please have a new Xbox game? I'm like, what's this stuff? What's going on? This doesn't feel genuine.
First off, yes, but what's wrong with you?
You maniac.
Is there something weird between us? Like, did I say something? Yeah.
Right. I'd almost be feeling like there was a disconnect in our relationship. But the point is, of course, when he comes to me and says, can I have an Xbox game? I know who he is. He knows who I am. We've bought many Xbox games. We probably read a story last night. We went out and did some cricket in the yard. Like we love each other. So there's a context.
I guess the difference is relational versus formulaic.
Right.
Like
yes.
You do formulas when you're going about something that is not primarily relational.
Yeah, and paganism has sort of incantations and imprecations of things, specific formulae that have to be used.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. And this is as a side note, why when sometimes our liturgy can be confused as being that, like you have to say the right things for God. That's not at all the point. The point is like actually us kind of like reading through this thing together, so that we all kind of get ourselves on the same page every week. It's useful, but like God's, communion is the body of Christ sharing bread and wine in prayer and fellowship under Jesus, in Jesus' name.
Yeah. Those words we have, it's a good idea to write them out first. Yeah. So that we don't, say silly things at communion and mislead people. It's such a sensitive part of the church service that we really need to make sure we're saying the truth. But yeah, you're right. I think we can easily fall into the idea that there's a particular almost magic structure of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Or substance or whatever.
But really, Jesus is a person and he interacts with all kinds of different people in all kinds of different ways. There's tremendous freedom in him to come to him in a billion different ways.
So huge variety of condition, huge variety of method of healing, huge variety of method of approach. He approaches them, they approach him. No one really approaches anyone, whatever. Jesus is the consistent thing in all of this. I guess suffering is a consistent thing, but albeit in many different ways.
Yeah.
There are quite a few run-ins with his opponents. who are feeling threatened by some aspect of what's revealed about him.
Yeah.
But they're not in every passage. I mean, they do consistently behave the same way, but they're not in every passage.
You can't really pin him down what he's going to do in any given thing. He's so dynamic and complex and interesting. I mean, he's God, so we should expect that, right?
Yeah. Well, that in itself is a reveal, I think.
Yeah.
The slightly mysterious thing, he doesn't fit in a box. There's not a flow chart here.
I think that gets into the issue of like we've been wrestling with this whole series of does Jesus heal based on our faith, or does he just heal because he's Jesus? You know, like do we need to have more faith, or does Jesus just do what he does regardless? And the answer is kind of, well, sometimes Jesus applauds the faith of some. Sometimes he chides people to have more faith. And then sometimes he just heals people who are not even actors in the situation at all. They're just sitting there, like the dead girl, right? She doesn't...
And then they behave in different ways. I mean, sometimes like he heals... Do you remember that one? We didn't cover it in this series, but where he heals the 10 lepers. Oh, yeah. And so like 9 of them just go skipping off into the distance, and one comes back and says, cheers. Yeah. And like, you know, it's like you've got 10 guys who have an identical condition. They're given the identical healing at the identical time. They behave differently. The majority basically just crack on with life, seemingly without any reference back to Jesus. One comes back to worship. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you even get identical situations that work out differently.
A variety of responses to Jesus.
Yeah. And, you know, you get people like your one with the dead girl, with the mourners, the spectators laughing at him. You know, she's dead, you ridiculous man. Yeah. And so you get mockery and you get wonder.
Yeah. So I feel like preaching through this, like our point is not like, this is what you need to do for healing or something like that. But rather it's just like, hey, check out Jesus. He's incredibly complex and amazing. You should get to know him. You hurting? Just get to know him. And
there's a hook, isn't there?
Yeah. Very, very much so.
There's something about him. He's fascinating. He doesn't fit a category. He's good.
Yeah.
He's consistently good.
And he's also scary a little bit.
I think so. I mean, I think some of these rebukes ought to have been scary.
Yeah.
But in fact, talking of rebuke, I mean, in our passage, there's rebuking going on, but it's the crowd. We can turn to it if you like.
Oh, yeah,
there's the crowd. So we're in Matthew 20, verses 29 onwards, and there's rebuking, but it's the crowd rebuking the people who want to be healed, saying, "Shut up! you know, you need to be quiet here."
Should we just read it?
Yeah.
I can read it, I guess. All right. Matthew chapter 20, starting verse 29. And as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him, Jesus. And behold, there were 2 blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebuked them, you're right, telling them to be silent. But they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." I think that's cool. He says it again, states it again. And verse 32, stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." And Jesus in pity touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. That's the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
So fascinating, isn't it? The pity of Jesus.
Yeah, pity or compassion. Splegnesthai, I think, which is having to do with your guts or the movement of your inner being,
the tender.
The
tender twisting of guts.
Yeah. You were saying like this makes its way into our language, right?
For sure.
If something terrible happens, you're gutted.
I'm gutted. It's a very English phrase, gutted. Carla, my mother-in-law, said that when she first met me, she said, "Xander and Catherine are just gutted about everything all the time. They're always saying they're gutted." And it's such an idiom. Oh, I'm gutted. You're gutted. It's like sports results. I'm gutted, mate. I'm gutted for you.
Or like, man, they've got guts.
That's a different thing, right? To have guts. Guts and glory means bravery.
Yeah. It's like your whole the core of your being has a sort of exertion of its will from your in the biblical worldview, right? That wasn't the idea wasn't that it was in your brain, in your head, but rather in your heart and in your guts, down inside the very center of your torso, almost. So Jesus
and I get this. I mean, this we joke and keep it sort of somewhat discreet and modest for the broadcast, but. One of the ways I work out stress is in my guts, and it just tends to be that I get real pain, just no more.
Cramps,
it's just sort of a cramp. It doesn't manifest in any other way than just really twisty cramps that come on at night if I'm worried about someone or grieved or stressed or anything like that. Just kind of process in the gut. Yeah. So we people know that people experience this. I said to my doctor, because I went to him about it, I said, I've got these sort of weird cramps in the guts and I'm worried about things. And he said, I've never heard of that before. I said, well, the Greek, sort of the splagna and the guts and, the sort of sense, the Greek sense that the seat of our emotion was in the bowels of compassion, Philippians. And like, he just looked at me like I was crazy.
Like what?
He said they don't teach that in medical school. I said, no, but they do teach it in seminary.
At a good seminary, at least, right? The bowels of compassion. All right, there you are, listeners. That's a take home for you.
For your Hallmark card for Valentine's Day in first century ancient Near East, would have a pile of offal just squirming around on the front. Wouldn't be a neat heart.
Yeah. my bowels are moved in love, out of compassion for you.
It's a more tender, more intimate image, I think, in that sense that there's something deep within him that's sort of gut-twistingly yearning for their good.
Yeah, for sure. That in itself is a sermon, and it might be the whole of the sermon that I'm going to preach this week that you'll all have listened to before this podcast came out.
Just by the way, the message says deeply moved. That's very euphemistic.
Deeply moved. Yeah, that is a euphemism. A couple other things I want to point out about this passage that may or may not be related just because of, since we, to keep it to a reasonable time here, I just want to look at our just the amount of context that's going on here. Okay, so fascinating things. Matthew records 2 blind men getting healed, right? Mm-hmm. Chapter 9.
Yes.
Matthew chapter 9, we see in verse 27, as Jesus passed on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying aloud, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said, "Do you believe that I'm able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, be it done to you." Mm-hmm. And their eyes were opened. So we have a very similar situation happening. 2 blind men.
Mercy on the Son of David.
Mercy on the Son of David. Now 2 blind men. This is not like copying the same story, because these are very different situations.
Okay.
The first 2... they're in a different location. Their faith is commended in the other one, and
there's a crowd in the one we're studying today saying, "Shush, there's no crowd here."
Yeah.
Right.
Some people have said, "Well, is Matthew just replicating the same story? Is this a scribal error?" Jesus healed a lot of blind dudes,
right?
So first off, we can say that Jesus definitely, almost assuredly, healed more blind men than the Gospels record. Right. Luke, John says at the very end of his gospel, like if we were to write down everything Jesus did, it would take all the books in the world.
Yeah.
So he healed a lot of blind guys. We shouldn't be thrown off by that.
And there's only so many ways you can say he healed a blind man.
Yeah, exactly. There's only so many ways, like you can say he healed blind men. There's 2 here he mentions specifically, and I think that Matthew is using this. This is my kind of crackpot theory, and I actually think it probably has solid biblical basis.
We do need a sound button for that.
So really?
We'll work on that.
Really? I'm not allowed to say that?
No. But crackpot theory, I think we should have a jingle or something. That would be useful.
I thought you're going to have to bleep that out.
No. I encourage it, but I just think that we should honor it with a sound.
Yeah. So I don't think this is sketchy or dubious, but I haven't done enough study at this point in the week that I'm like ready to stand in the pulpit and say it.
But you can spout off Bilge to the internet.
But I can just like, hey, take this for your consideration. This is interesting. Okay. Chapter 20, verse 17, Jesus foretells his death to the disciples. They're on their way up to Jerusalem, where he's going to be handed over and crucified. And then immediately after this, so he's talking about how he'll be mocked and flogged and crucified, and then he'll be raised on the third day. And then immediately after this, verse 20, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, they get their mom to come to Jesus, and she asks that, hey, Jesus says to her, "What do you want?" And she says, "I want my sons to sit one on your right hand, one on your left hand when you come into your kingdom." In other words, when you go in and kill all the Romans and dominate everything, and you're the new ruler, can you make James and John like your numbers 1 and 2 guys?
Yeah.
And Jesus responds to that with a mild kind of correction. Verse 26, it shall not be so, you shouldn't be like the Gentiles, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So you have two men who are great in Jesus's troop, right?
Yep.
Asking to be first, but Jesus says, no, actually, you're to be the servant. You're to be last. Mm-hmm. And then next episode, we have the two blind men.
Yep.
They're going into Jericho. The blind were just like, couldn't contribute to the economy. They're the last in the normal economy.
Yeah.
Jesus heals them by touching their eyes. And then after they've confessed that he's Lord and Son of David, they recover their sight, and this is the end of verse 34. They followed him. So two insiders go to the lowest part. Two outsiders come into the highest part. They're brought in and healed.
They follow him. And where do they follow him to? What's the next passage?
Yeah. Next passage for chapter 21, triumphal entry.
Right.
They go in and they get a donkey and the donkey's colt. So this is where it gets crackpot theory. Why are there two donkeys? Like you got two men, two donkeys. Is there something we're supposed to see there? I don't know. But in any case, we're definitely supposed to connect the two, like James and John, and contrast them with the two blind men. And the two blind men, having been restored, experience first this triumphal entry. So the first thing, I mean, obviously they may have gone and had dinner or whatever, but the first thing in Scripture that they see, because they followed him, is him getting ready to be enthroned as the Savior, the King, humbled on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. And there's the Palm Sunday, Hosanna, really exciting. They get to see that. And then this is the beginning of Holy Week. Within a week, they see this triumphal king who they've called David already. Yeah. And now it's been confirmed he must be David, because now everybody thinks he's David, and they're casting branches down and he's fulfilling Scripture left, right, and center, coming to the absolute apex of this glory moment. Boy, have these guys come in at the right time. Yeah. And what they suddenly see within a week of having their eyes opened is the crucifixion of the king. Yeah. With even Pilate admitting he was a king by sticking the word king above his head on the cross. Yeah. And then this their eyes have been opened for all of this wonderful stuff. Their hopes have been dashed within a week. And then 3 days later he rises and they're back up again. Yeah. I mean, I'm were they part of the 500 that witnessed? Who knows? This is a really, really extraordinary roller coaster that they are on. Their eyes have been opened in a very physical sense, but also in more than a physical sense. Quite likely, yeah. They see the reality of who Jesus is. They've been given eyesight at the beginning of Holy Week. Yeah, I think vision and seeing in the Gospels is always always about more than like
right.
visibly being able to navigate your way around. Like it's more than physical healing. Anytime you see a blind man, you need to look around and think, okay, there's a theme of spiritual seeing and not seeing, of perceiving who Jesus is or not understanding.
Yeah.
Seeing equals understanding or getting it, I guess, and not seeing means not understanding or not getting it.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about this, didn't we, in English idiom? Just exactly the same in Greek. The word blind means, first of all, not having eyesight, but you get phrases like blind alley, blind corner, blind bend, which means something else. Hard. Not something is going to be revealed as you go.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with a blind bend.
Yeah.
Right? You really have to drive around it to see what's around it.
Yeah, you've got to exactly. It's you have to keep going before it's revealed.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think these themes are kind of coming together in this passage where we see these blind men, and they want to see. Lord, let our eyes be opened. That's verse 33.
Right.
I wonder if that means more than simply let us be able to not have to, fumble our way around anymore.
Well, and it's a sort of super interesting way of putting it as well. Not Lord, open our eyes. It's just a sort of slightly passive way of putting it. It's partly a quirk of Greek, I'm sure, but it's just intriguing. He's the permitter of the eyes. He as Lord.
Yeah.
He gets to permit eyes to open or close. He gets to permit eyes to exist or not.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds a little bit more like it infers the sort of sovereignty of God kind of thing. Because, we would say that we talk about God in the same way, don't we? Lord, let this thing happen. He's the permitter of eyes.
He's the permitter of eyes.
Like I said, last week with the faith of the mustard seed in the mountain, and Jesus made that mountain.
Yeah.
It's also by his will that mountain remains mountainous. He's the Lord of molecules. He's the Lord of physics.
Anybody who knows a lot about quantum physics and quantum mechanics will tell you that that's basically the case, that like everything's kind of held together and composed at its utmost of like strings,
right,
we don't even know what it is.
There's no real reason at a quantum level why that mountain couldn't exist somewhere else or in a different form.
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
So you bore deeply down enough and you realize that.
Yeah, I think the laws themselves, the laws of nature, testify to this God of order.
Yeah.
He permits gravity to be. I mean, even his name, I am. I think, he permits existence to exist by existing.
Yeah. Yeah. G.K. Chesterton said something like this.
Whoa. Carry on.
Go ahead.
This is the Lost Historical Point so jingle. All right, carry on.
Oh, thanks. So, sorry, I'm waiting for it.
You have been awarded 1 Mario coin. Yeah!
That's so good.
Yeah,
thanks for that. So he said, G.K. Chesterton said, the sun doesn't come up every day because it's just revolves and naturally does that. It comes up every day because God wills it to do so and says every day, that's good. Yeah. I want this to happen again. And so every single moment of his existence is being upheld by God actively. So not only did he create something in the sense a watchmaker sets it in motion and then sends it off, but rather God is literally creating the whole universe at every single moment.
Yeah.
And if he didn't, then it just wouldn't be.
Yeah, yeah.
So we shouldn't think of everything as being simply contained by this set of Newtonian laws that, this closed self-sustaining system. The universe just doesn't work like that.
It's upheld.
Any scientist is going to, worth their salt, is going to tell you that. They might not say the word God because that, I guess, doesn't work in scientific language. But
you just lose your funding.
Yeah.
It's perfectly valid. You just lose your funding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no big.
Go, internet. Work with that one.
So I think this brings us back to the verse that I was thinking of is Matthew 6:22. The eye is the lamp of the body.
Ooh.
When your eye is healthy, then your whole body is filled with light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. So the idea is that your ability to perceive reality is so crucial. And Jesus is after helping us to perceive reality and to reckon with reality always. That's why these healings of blind men are so significant. That Jesus, for all of us, wants to heal our ability to see and restore our sight. Whether you are physically blind, whether you have 20/20 vision, or regardless, he wants to restore our sight and bring us to health so that we can see reality, which is the same as seeing him in his glory.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus is all about with each and every one of us.
So the greater reveal to them, the greater opening of the eyes, is a spiritual one rather than a physical one. It mirrors it.
I think so.
The physical comes first in this case, but in doing this, he's confirming their claim that he is the Son of David.
Yeah. And we're not just making this up. Like, the gospel writers very clearly do this in several places. And I won't go into demonstrating it right on this podcast, but like it's a very clear theme. Right. Sight and physical sight and spiritual sight.
I mean, I think it's also funny how the crowd react. In verse 31, the crowd rebuked them. So actually they're sitting by the roadside. That's a very humble kind of a thing. They're in the dust or on the edge, on the edge and on the ledge, just sitting on the side. Jesus was passing by. They cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." Cried out that sense of, this isn't a discreet request. There's a screeching kind of, my only chance. Hey, over here.
Yeah.
And so the crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, which is really funny. So it's like, shush, silly person, shush. Don't disturb him. You're not good enough for him, or we want to see what he's going to do and you're getting in the way. Shut up, whatever. They don't want, the crowd does not want these blind men to kind of get up and spoil whatever's going to happen. So maybe out of respect for Jesus, these guys aren't worthy. Maybe out of a zeal to see him do something amazing, brackets, duh, if they would be quiet, he would. Or something. But it's funny that there could be people in our lives who do not want us to see Jesus. There could be people in our lives that do not want our eyes to be opened.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't we all have them? Are they threatened by the idea that maybe we'll be able to see? I don't know. I don't know what the motive is.
That'll preach.
But it can't be good. And then it says, and stopping, which you've talked several times in this series about how time slows down, and at the point of the healing, he stretched out his hand, and that kind of, like almost like the language says, pause, slow down, slow-mo, let's see this.
Jesus stops.
What do you want me to do for you? Which is really cool and really funny. It's like, duh, I'm blind.
He doesn't,
But we've had that before, I think, and a similar phrase.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
And I don't know. Like, does he want them just to vocalize? Can we see, or is he saying, there's a lot of stuff you could have here?
There's so many things. Like, Jesus sees beyond merely their sight or their need for physical sight, and sees that they actually have greater needs. They need to see who he is. So he says, like, well, what do you want?
I want my eyes to be opened. I want a Ferrari. I want world peace. In that order.
I want everyone to serve me. That's what I want.
Yeah. And then Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes. So his motivation, we're told about his motivation, and that's the guts.
Yeah.
Something stirs within the depths of his guts as he looks at these guys who can't look at him, and he just feels what it would feel like to be them. And this sort of thing keeps him awake at night.
Jesus is moved with compassion at the sight of sinners and sufferers. He is. It's who he is. He describes himself in Matthew 11:34 as gentle and lowly of heart. He's. It's like that's what he's like. this one who's so powerful, the Son of David, this Lord.
I mean, you find out in this passage not only who he is, but also what he's like.
Yeah.
What is the Son of David like? He is full of mercy and compassion.
Yeah.
He feels what we feel.
Anyone who's ever experienced real compassion from another person or something like that knows too the extent of that, of how restorative and how healing it is to receive real grace. And you realize that it's no small thing.
When you're grieving, it's wonderful if a brother or sister comes to grieve with you. And they're actually bereaved with you.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. It's a huge, huge difference. And so it's not a given when we meet someone that they'll be full of compassion in their very core of their being. But Jesus is like that.
Yeah. I
think so that makes him utterly different than almost anyone that we meet. Most people are not moved with compassion.
No, most of them are busy.
Yeah.
And immediately they recover their sight, and that's it. That's the healing, because the healing's not the point, as they say.
Yeah, that's another theme.
Oh, yeah. And followed him.
May it be so for all of us.
Yeah.
The Los Yetis agree.
This is what the blind men sung when their eyes were opened.
Yes.
They immediately burst into song.
Second Opinions, chapter 56, verse 3.
I'm feeling crazy and I'm lifting my arm. That's the English translation.
Really?
Because they're charismatics.
There it is.
This has been a podcast of Christ Church Fox Chapel. At least the good bits have. The other stuff was put out by Ascension. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you very soon.